Hello, welcome to another update. It's the 12th, not long to go now, just a few days before it's resolved one way or the other. And just to give you a little bit of update, but before we do, I talked about Q last night, and there's been quite a big reaction to that. So I just want to clarify and have things a bit more clear. There is a real Q and there are real Anons, but to my knowledge there isn't a QAnon. So there are real Anons, predominantly in America, but not exclusively so, researching, decoding, understanding, checking back, projecting forward, and they do a remarkable job, and that's actually what they were supposed to do. And there is a Q, and I want to explain to you, please, what Q is, whether you are going to agree with me or not, but hopefully you're open-minded enough to listen to what I have to say. Originally, Q was 4 guys and a quantum computer, and it was a purely military operation. After the initial information dump had been done, and remember, a lot of this was projected forward. A quantum computer operates at or on the speed of light, and it is able to see into the future and predict in a way that no other artificial intelligence or electronic device can do. And so right back in 2016 and 17, information was produced which has an absolute effect today. It's playing out now. How would they know this? Because it was quantum and they could look at the different timelines. When they had done that, they didn't want to get rid of this, but they wanted to pass it across to the people. Because they wanted to build a movement. They wanted to get this information embedded into the American group, but also outside of America. And so a number of teams were selected, and then from that, excuse me, it's grown organically. You can't just be an Anon. You have to really sort of be accepted, and you have to be really good at looking at the information and understanding it. Part of this offshoot of this group were the groups cataloguing the affidavits, and this group were actually paid. They actually had a paid job, and they were doing it for 12 months. And I spoke to them on several occasions. At the end of that period, they were no longer paid, but they decided as a group that they would continue voluntarily to maintain this database, to maintain it, to keep it going. And so right across the US, the Anon movement is unfunded and unpaid, and is working on that. But there has to be somebody who oversees the paperwork. That's the best term I can use. There are teams of people. There has to be somebody who manages what the points are. The quantum machine and Q release the information, the drops, but there has to be coordination on the ground, and the vast majority of people in the Q movement do not know who Q is. They don't even know who the people are around making things happen at that level, and that's quite right, and that's as it should be. Now, the person I spoke to over an hour and a half was chosen by, they said to me, I was chosen by the administration. That's the wording they used. I say that's Trump. They were chosen by the administration, and they were chosen to be involved and to do the front-facing work, if you like, the paperwork. So that is the person who I spoke to. It's quite true that Q won't do external material, but the person fronting Q, and I don't mean pretending, I mean the person who is responsible for maintaining the network, is able to do that communications. And as I said, that's the person that I spoke to, has some incredibly interesting and accurate intel, is embedded with the Trump team and has been, and is very, very closely associated with Q, with the dissemination of information, with the way that it is understood and pushed out. But in terms of say managing people is too grand a word, but in terms of maintaining the impetus, maintaining the power behind it, maintaining the focus and the drive, making sure that that stays through. And that person is associated with the president, and that person has spoken to me. Now, if people are not prepared to accept that, that's perfectly fine. That's your choice. But there will come a time, not too long in the future, when much of this will be made public, made bare, and then that's what will be shown to be happening. So I wanted to get that clear to you. It may be that the Q that we understand is never presented to the public, is never involved in anything outside, but the person that has to act for Q, and that always has to be, because we're in a third dimensional world, we're in a physical world. We can't just rely on electronic communications. There has to be somebody who relates to the president, hears what the president has to say, goes back and say, this is what the boss, that's what he's called, the boss, this is what the boss would like us to do. Now, can we try and do that? Or the boss wants us to bring this forward. So, for many people who are not American, the concept of the boss or POTUS is something that is not natural to us. It's only if you're American or involved in American. But the person that I spoke to last night will always refer to the President of the United States as the boss or POTUS. Okay, so that's a fact. And as I said, if people are struggling to understand that, then I understand that, to a certain extent. But I have to tell you what I'm told. I don't, but I choose to tell you. I choose to pass on what I'm told. And if I'm told something from people who've never let me down, who have always given me good information, I'm not going to start doubting them now. And so what I will do is always pass that information on if it could save lives, or it could empower people, or give people courage or strength or confidence. And goodness knows we need it at the moment, because it seems to be so tipped against us. So that's what that is. Now I want to talk about the Italian. I put a link out, and unfortunately YouTube have taken down the video. So for a while there was the text document and the video had gone. Now they have taken down the text document. Now I don't really understand how it works, but there are some very old phones. I have one old phone deliberately. My old phone is getting the text but not the video. More modern phones that have been updated, particularly Apple phones, not only can they not get the video, but they're not getting the text either. Now I have put that out, and I've taken screenshots, and if it's like completely nobody can get it, I will put those screenshots out. Unfortunately they're just screenshots, but you can read most of it. What it's saying is that an affidavit, and I know that people think outside of America, well, what's the use of an affidavit? Well, it is an important thing in America, but this is important because it's come via the Italian government and the private company running the software and the controls for the Leonardo satellites. Now, that affidavit was deliberately delivered to the Congress before they took the decision to ratify the victory for Biden. That's very important, because by doing that, they've put themselves all into treason. That affidavit could have been delivered at any time. They've been sitting on it for a number of good guys have been holding on it for a while, but they waited until just prior to that confirmation, to the rubber stamping, the certifying of a Biden win. They presented it officially, and now that the Congress has accepted Biden's win and not undertaken an investigation, which any democratic Parliament or lawmakers would have done. Hold on a minute, we need to check this out. This isn't just coming from, the guy in the hardware store around the corner. This is coming from the Italian government. We need to look at this. So they absolutely knew that this was a bombshell, so they chose to bury it and just go ahead and put Biden in. As shocking as it is, a large number of the Republican Party are corrupt. And that's shocking, because in most countries you tend to have one party that's corrupt and one party that's not corrupt. That is the picture that's painted, whether that's true or not. That's the image or the picture that's painted. And what we've got in America is a situation quite difficult. Now, the person, I can't even dare use the word Q because people are going to get upset with me. The person I spoke to for an hour and a half told me that President Trump, when he came in 2016, sat round with the generals and said, we could clear this up now. We could do it. And apparently Trump was very keen to go in and get that done. What happened was that the report he got back was that something like, at that time, 70% of the United States government would have to be arrested. That's staggering. That's back in 2016. It's a lot higher now. In other words, what the president was told was that the American government would grind to a halt. So what they've been doing, and this is really exciting, and I only learned this last night on this phone call, what they've been doing over the 4 years is getting people in line ready. So in other words, if 85% of the Senate is charged, or 85% of Congress is charged, they have people already lined up to be sworn in an emergency session and go straight in and take over the running of the houses. Now, this person that I spoke to yesterday and did the 1.5 hour phone call specifically said that that will be the administration, they wanted Robert David Steele, Charlie Ward, and myself, and another individual which I haven't met from America, to do a roundtable discussion, and that would be right, how we got to this position, what's going to happen. And it's felt that this group is best able and best knowledgeable to get the information out. That's coming directly from the administration. And the person that I don't know that in America who's hopefully going to join the group is one such person who will be offered a position as a senator when all this works out. So the Trump team, the people behind this situation, haven't just said, let's clear everybody out and then try and put it all back together again. What they've said is, we're going to have a fallback position so that once we've cleared it all out, we'll hit the floor running. We're going to bring in all these new people who are not corruptible. They are committed to the Republic, and we can get on with it, with the running of government. So back to the Italy situation. It was absolutely clear that the Italian government, or members, I must be very careful, members of the Italian government were working with the Vatican, not just to move money around, we know all about that of course, but to move in real time and change these votes electronically. They did it by satellite because anything on the ground is much easier to trace, VPN lines, any sort of communications, but send it up into space, whack it around in space a bit, and then send it down to China or another country, very hard to pick up. We know that Italy was transmitting information to Frankfurt via these Leonardo satellites. We know that the Kraken team, who very sadly lost operations, lost operatives in the battle to obtain that building and that information, but I suppose it was worth it. Already knew of the connection, but they didn't know that the information was being traveled by satellite. So right, here's where we go with it. And I spoke earlier that this was a NATO country. Italy is a NATO country. And I remember both Charlie Ward and Robert David Steele shaking their heads vigorously when I said it's a completely different ball game if you were to go to the public and say that a NATO country, a member of the United Nations, NATO, has actually tried to overthrow you. We would expect it of Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, but you don't expect it from someone who is officially declared as your friend. So this is a very difficult political situation. How do they get out of it? So what happened was that the Italian government per se said to the Trump administration, can we please run the story that these satellites were hacked? We'll say that person or persons unknown hacked these satellites, took this information without the Italian government knowing. It gets us off the hook. And the Trump administration said, yes, okay, but we're going to want some arrests. That's why we've had all the talk about the president or the prime minister of Italy being arrested. We've got all this debate backwards and forwards whether the Pope has been arrested or whether he's no longer here. But it's because the Italian government is determined to save itself, excuse me, and not have to face the accusation that it conspired to remove the head of the world's most powerfulest country. We've got a huge connection then between the Vatican and what goes on. Now, why is the Vatican so involved? I've been sent some information which I am not going to share because I've been told not to share it. But I have seen information which shows key people like Obama, like the Clintons, and some names I don't even recognize, and how much money they have stored away. It's not a printout sheet of their bank accounts, but somebody has gone through all of the bank accounts, put all the money together, added it all up, and then they have totals, whether that's exactly to the cent or who knows, but there's totals. And these key individuals, there's a figure next to them of how much money. Now, I'm not allowed to show that, but I don't see why I can't say to you that of the 12 or 15 names that I was given, 10 of them have money in the bank in the Vatican Bank. So there's your connection. And I'm talking staggering amounts of money. I'm not just talking hundreds of thousands. I'm not talking millions. I'm talking more in the Vatican Bank. So the Vatican is incredibly powerful to do with money. And so I understand now why this was happening. And we know in the dying days of the Obama administration, $400 million was moved into that area specifically as a fighting fund to attack President Trump. Obama is deliberately responsible for all of the attacks because that requires money, and 400 million was used. There's other monies as well which was put aside, but that's the money that I'm particularly aware of. So we have a situation in Italy now where even the Italians at government level know the truth about the stealing of the 20 election, I beg your pardon, the November 3rd 20 election, and are desperate to extricate themselves because they know that the bad side is coming down. They absolutely know that, and they don't want to be brought down with it. So that's why the Italian thing is so important. The proof of this is because YouTube have taken it down. They took down the video first off, and now they are taking down the text part of it. That is a badge of honor, really. I also put a clip out which was old in the sense it was about 5-6 hours old, and I haven't seen it because I was doing everything else. But the military movement in Texas, there's a really truthful video taken by a couple in a camper or a RV of these military vehicles moving. I want to tell you that is in Texas. That's not made clear, but that's in Texas. There should be some activity with the president either today or tomorrow, either in Texas or Arizona. I did project that for you. That is still scheduled at some point. The president is incredibly upbeat. There is no doubt that going right back to the murder of John F. Kennedy in 1963, when 200 generals said this would never happen again, they have maintained that. So they're not the same 200, but there's this rule that 200 generals work together. And that's why President Trump said when he came to office, I have 200 generals behind me. They have worked for decades for the moment that we are now in. So don't for 1 minute think that the good guys are going to lose. This has been planned for far beyond and above anything that the bad guys could come up with. And I haven't shared it because I was asked not to share it. But I suppose I can describe it to you. It didn't say I couldn't describe it. It just said you can't share this video. On the day of the 6th, when the action was taking place around the Capitol building, I have been sent a private video of the president's team and associates, if I can call them that, watching from a secure location everything playing out. So it's quite informal, and instead of there being pessimism or doom and gloom, or it's very serious, but it's very positive. So what I'm trying to get across to everybody is that President Trump is not running around panicking or shouting. People are not betraying him in the inner circle. Oh, sure, all the other people on the hangers-on, but he already knew who they were. And often, the president has put people into a position so they play a game and then they leave. So how it's playing out really is to a script, if we can call it that, to a projection that the good guys have been working on since 1963. And again, on that phone conversation, the reset, that was the old word we used to use 5 or 6 years ago. The change, the going back to what cost President Kennedy his life. Many people thought that President Kennedy was murdered because of his interest in UFOs, or his interaction with the trade unions. The real reason that he was murdered was because he was about to do something to the Federal Reserve. He was about to try to put America back on the gold standard, and of course the deep state were never going to have that, and so they murdered him. So you can't be in positions of power in America and not know about that. You can't be in positions of power without deciding which side of the fence you're on. And so the good people, I'm coming right forward now to President Trump, decided that they wanted to complete the work that Kennedy had almost got into place. He was only a few weeks or days even from signing that off, which would have meant, removing the CIA from the influence game. So what should happen, we can never be 100% sure, but what should happen is, as part of all of this changes and developments that we're going through, America should return to the gold standard, which means that it's not possible for corruption in the same way that we've had. It's not just the gold standard, it's the way that banks relate to each other, how interest is charged, how people can take our money, your money, the people's money, and then do things with it at night time, invest it here, invest it there, blood diamonds, arms, bombs, and bring it back and do something else with it. That's all got to change. And so moving back to a financial system that does actually set humanity free. So it's not just, when will the tanks be on the street? When will the power go off? When will mainstream media be taken down? When will the emergency broadcast system come out? It's not just about that. It's about saving humanity. It's about moving things forward, because you can't just go through one revolution without making it so secure it never happens again. Look at France. They had the French Revolution, and what happened there? So they went round, they cut all the heads off, as many of the bad people they could get their hands on, and then they ran out of money. It's always about money. They ran out of money, and they said, look, we've got all these French chateaus, we've got these enormous palaces in Versailles and all the rest of it, we can't run them. So what did they do? They actually sold them back to the very families that they dispossessed them of. So the very people that they arrested and some were killed, they ended up selling the properties back to these people, and then they moved back in. So there was no change. liberty, equality, fraternity is nonsense. Nothing changed. And so what people have learnt since the death, or the murder, I must be clear, the murder of Kennedy, is that you can't just go through a form of revolution because there could be a counter-revolution. You have to set in place a system that changes the world, not just America. And that's what this is all about. So, you know, we are all playing our own role. You're playing your role. I'm playing my role. People who are unsung heroes who are never even seen, they're playing their role. And hopefully we're doing it because we believe that what we're doing is right. You know, and I'll just finish on the Q, the letter Q. And there should be no coincidence that, you know, I've been offered a position to go to America, to be in Arizona, to be in Phoenix, and not only that, to be in the part of Phoenix called Scottsdale. Scottsdale is the home of the Q movement, and just research it. Those of you in the movement will know that. Just research it. So, you know, I have a vested interest, because if Joe Biden was to become the president, I'm not moving to America. I wouldn't be allowed in. I'd probably be, I don't know, I'd be shot or imprisoned, but I think they'd just put me on the airplane and send me straight back. So I have a very big vested interest, because if I want to go to the US, and I do, it's not going to happen if Biden's in there, because, you know, we're on completely different sides of the tracks. So I want Trump to get in for all the reasons I've just given you, and then after that, for the personal reason that then I can go to the US and I can then start looking at building healing centers. You know, I want to build healing centers with med beds in, so that these children that are being rescued from the underground locations can be effectively treated. And if anybody thinks that that's all nonsense, that there are no children held under deep underground bases, then I'm sorry, you're not doing your research properly, because there are regrettably a large number of women and children and men being held against their will in underground facilities by the most evilest people that I can ever imagine. And there are many of us on the planet who are absolutely determined to do whatever we can, no matter how little it is, to try and do something positive. And that's why, you know, I want to get this healing centre in partnership up in Great Britain. And if it wasn't for this wretched lockdown that we're all under, I and those who are with me would have really moved this on now. But it's there. We have to wait for these ridiculous laws to be taken off us, and we'll get the first Connecting Consciousness in Partnership Healing Centre up and running here in Great Britain, United Kingdom. Get to America, get one up running there, and start doing some practical physical help for all these people who are survivors of something that the vast majority, 99% of the world's population, have no clue about. They just don't know the evil that's been perpetrated on people. But they shall know, and they shall know because they need to know the truth. All right, so that's the update. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll obviously keep you up to date with things that are going on. Take care.